Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. If you are on a budget or if you are looking for some amazing steals in the mass market deck world, then look no further because we are going to be talking today about affordable mass market Oracle decks. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to make this video right now because I really had a lot of fun doing Mass Market Madness #1 where we were talking about tarot decks. Today we're going to talk about Oracle. Who knows what we're going to talk about next? Probably a mix of both, or who knows? Who knows? We'll see how it plays out. But I really wanted to feature just Oracle decks today. Fantastic, fantastic Oracle decks that I personally love and use all of the time and that I think are just amazing bargains. We are going to get into it right now. Okay, so the first amazing treasure I want to share with you guys is the Oracle of the Mermaids by Karen Kay with artwork by Linda Olson. This is such a beautiful mermaid oracle deck, and the fact that this is mass market still kind of blows my mind. I'm not gonna lie. This is such a gorgeous deck. For starters, can we talk about these deck backings? Are these not the most beautiful deck backs you've ever seen? I mean, I'm a water baby, so I'm totally biased, but like, I think they're stunning. There's no words, there's no borders, they're beautiful. The cards are glossy, but I kind of like the gloss on this deck. I will admit, I mean, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I really feel like gloss on decks can be a really great addition, particularly when it's done well, and I think in this case it is done really, really well. Now, one of the things that absolutely knocks my socks off about this deck is the diversity, because oftentimes when we see mermaid decks, they're very homogenous, they all look kind of the same, but this is so amazing and it's done so completely well. I freaking love the body diversity, the racial diversity, the age diversity. I just feel, maybe age not as much, but I feel like there is some. I love this deck, and if you check out in the cards and in the description box below, I will have a link to my full walkthrough. But this is such a beautiful deck. But beyond its aesthetics, which I think are just really well done, there is the fact that the keywords in this deck are incredibly expansive and usable. I freaking love this patience card. And I do think that it's not just like random pictures of mermaids with like keywords on them. I do think the artwork and the word definitely go together, and I think that's just really awesome about this deck. I think this is such a gem, and I don't actually hear a ton of people talking about it. I mean, it is relatively new, but I just think it's freaking gorgeous. Look at this breaking free, and she's all entangled with the octopus here. I just think this is a gorgeous deck and definitely worth your attention, and definitely worth the currently $17.42 US that I think it's selling for. I think I think that's right. I think its normal price is about 20 bucks US, and then, you know, whatever your conversion is if you're buying in Canada or whatever. But like I am, to be honest, have not spent a ton of time with the guidebook on this deck, but I do think that it probably is pretty good. I remember taking a glance at it when I first got this deck in hand, but to be honest, most of the time when I use this one, I just work off of the keywords. So I can't speak a lot about the guidebook. If you have this deck and you have worked with the guidebook, I would love it if you would leave a comment for other people finding this video and let us know what you think of the guidebook. Do you enjoy working with it? I don't remember having any kind of an issue with it, and it does look nice and chunky for an Oracle deck guidebook, so that's nice. But really, I'm just a sucker for these cards and the keywords and the artwork. I freaking love it. It's so pretty. So yeah, that is the Messages from the Mermaid Oracle deck. This one is done by Hay House. So that means you can even get it cheaper if you get it from Hay House during one of their sales, which they have sales all of the time. So don't miss out. This is a beauty. Scoop it up. It's gorgeous. I love it. Okay, so next up is probably out of all of these, the Oracle deck that is the newest to me in my collection. And this is the Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron Reed and Jenna De La Grataglia. Now, this is an older deck that the two of them created. And I have to say, I held off on this for the longest time, but I'm so glad that I brought it home. Now, I did go ahead and trim my deck. I took all the borders off and I edged it in gorgeous pastel colors for the most part, which you can see there. I think this deck looks stunning borderless. I think it really brought this deck to life, and I have so much to say about it. First of all, I was working with this deck in the month of April, so I've got some recent thoughts. Now, I did shuffle reversals in, and I'll talk more about why in a little bit. This is an older deck. I would say that it's actually not completely the artwork that draws me. It's the combination of the keywords and the way that the guidebook is handled that I think makes this deck really, really usable and lovely. I think that it has a lot of wisdom and find myself drawn to it more often than not. The other deck from the two of them that I really enjoy is the Enchanted Map Oracle. I will admit that I tend to not jive with a lot of their newer decks, and I don't know what it is about them, but this one I think it's just really, really beautifully done, and I think the messages are really, really good. Now, speaking of the messages, since I mentioned that the book is such a huge part about why I love this deck, let's talk about the book for a second, because I think it's just really, really smart and really well done. So it's really chunky, as you can see, and one of the things that I think is so well handled in this guidebook and makes it such a usable Oracle deck for so many different kinds of readings is that the way the guidebook is structured gives you 4 different kinds of messages. So when you pull a card from this deck, you get its essential meaning. So actually, I guess that's 5 different kinds of messages. So you get its essential meaning and its oracle message. Now, the oracle message I find tends to be more like an advice type of card, just a general kind of advice kind of card. So there's the meaning of the card, there's the advice of the card, but then you get a very specific message to do with your relationship. So if you want a reading about your relationship, somebody you're seeing, that kind of thing, then the relationship message section will cover that for you. And I think that just makes it really, really usable. You also get a prosperity message, which is about money or work. Now, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I read for clients and I read for myself, and most of the things we're thinking about has to do with our relationships with other people, whether romantic or not. Sometimes it's like regular platonic relationships that we're curious about, right? But it has to do with our relationships with other people and about our work and how we make a living, maybe our projects, things like that. So the fact that there is a relationship message and then a prosperity message, which you can use when it comes to your work and such and money and that sort of thing, I think that's brilliant. But then you add onto that, there is a protection message. Now, the protection message to me is like how I would work with the reversals. And that is why I shuffle reversals into this deck, because there's a specific message here for if you pull the card in the reversal and can look at that more protection message. And I find that the way those are worded, rather than being like the opposite of the meaning or anything like that, the protection messages to me seem to be more like a little more shadow work themed, like a little bit more calling you out, like a little more tough love in those protection messages. And I really love being able to get that out of a deck like this. And it makes this deck like so multi-purpose to me. And for reading for myself, I just really, really love having such a really good chunky guidebook. And I think this is just really well done. I know that there's been a lot of decks that have come out from Colette since then. And I can't speak to all those. Like I said, I've had a hard time connecting with most of them, but this one and the Enchanted Map both have served me really well. And so I just think this is a really wonderful one to consider while it's still in print. And I think this one retails, I know on Amazon it runs for about $15 US or so. So it's definitely super affordable. And again, I think it's totally worth checking it out. So next up, we have another Hay House deck, and that is one of my all-time favorites, the Animal Kin Oracle. Now, I believe current versions of this deck have a slightly different box and a different backing on the cards, but as far as I know, those are the only changes. If somebody knows otherwise, please feel free to let me know. Again, because this is a Hay House deck, you can often scoop it up during a sale. Hay House will regularly have steep discount sales with free shipping, and that includes to Canada, at least the couple of times I've taken advantage of them. So really, really wonderful. Sometimes they have buy one, get one half off, that sort of thing. So you have 2 Hay House Oracle decks in the mix here to look at if you see one of those sales. I'm just saying they may be worth adding to your list if you're looking for something affordable but really good. The Animal Kin Oracle was originally an independent produced deck by Sarah Wilder. Hay House picked it up. Go Hay House, because I think this is a really beautifully done deck. I never knew about it when it was an independent deck. I found it, I think in it must have been 2018. I might be getting my dates wrong, but I've had it for a while. This remains my #1 when it comes to just a general animal deck. There are 65 cards in here, and they are all absolutely stunning. One of the things I love about it is all the different super vibrant, unique borders. So while there is a border on every card, and it's quite a chunky border, it's part of the art. Like each one is different. There's no homogeneous look to the cards. I also really love the backs, and I do like the new backings as well. I've seen them, but I love these blue backs so much. Again, I will have a link in the cards or the description box to, I did a video where I was comparing different animal decks I had at the time, and that's when I did a full walkthrough of this deck. But it is gorgeous, and it is such a great, well thought out deck. Not only are each card or is each card numbered? So you have a tiny little number here right in the top of that little emblem. That emblem is also different based on what suit the cards are in. So there are elemental suits for this deck of earth, air, fire, water, and I believe spirit. I could be wrong on that. And then they're also numbered. But then you also have the name of the animal, in case you don't know, this is a goat, and you also have a keyword. This ticks every single box of mine for an animal deck. I don't want an animal deck that just says what the animal is. If this card just said if this card just said goat, I would have never bought this deck because I want keywords. Animal medicine is beautiful, but I want keywords to jump off of. And here, the keyword choices in this deck are just perfect to me. They're really, really well done, and they're expansive. They really let you have a jumping off point. There's a wonderful mix of animals in this deck, and if you don't know, the two animals that I always like to see in my animal decks are, I want to see a unicorn and a ladybug, ideally. And there's only a couple of decks that meet that criteria, as well as having great keywords, as well as. I mean, and this is, the one that I have is a beautiful matte cardstock. It feels substantial. I love that sloth is wisdom and not just like laziness. I love that. But it's a really, really beautiful deck. It's super underrated in my opinion. It has been out long enough that I think people have just kind of forgotten about it, but I think it is really, really beautiful. And this one does tend to retail for, I think, around $20 to $22 US. I could be wrong on that. Again, it is a Hay House deck, and if you can get this gorgeous deck for like 40% off, I mean, that is a steal, because this has the quality, both in the box, the cards, and the guidebook, of an independent deck. Like, look at this meaty guidebook. It's really, really good. The messages in here are fantastic. I've worked with the guidebook a lot. Every single animal card will have a kin essence, which gives you kind of like a little message. So, for example, in this manta ray card, which the keyword is presence, the kin essence is, your presence is your most powerful gift. Be here now. And like, how cool is that? It's just a really great deck. It's got a system, there's suits. I mean, it feels like an independent deck, because of course it was an independent deck and then was picked up. So this is a real treasure, well worth your money in my opinion. And if you're looking for a really good oracle, especially if you don't have a lot of oracles and you want one that's going to be really multi-purpose and like pair up with a lot of things, I feel like Animal Kin Oracle, I can match it up with just about any deck. Lots of great colors in it. It doesn't clash with anything, and it's just so good. I really like it. So that is the Animal Kin Oracle. Okay, deck number 4 on today's list is a deck that if you've ever booked a client reading with me, you may have seen, because I use it pretty frequently in my client readings. But it is the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle by Kelly Sullivan Walden, and the artwork is by Rasuli. Now, I've had a bit of before I found this deck, I was really, really longing for a Rasuli artwork oracle deck, because there were some good ones out there, but all of the themes of the other Rasuli artwork decks that I found just didn't resonate with me. There was something about their theme that I just didn't get along with, but I think Rasuli's artwork is absolutely stunning. We'll look at some of the cards. But this one, man, first of all, hi, look at the backs. Yes, it is glossy. You can see my camera there. Hello. It is a really, really beautiful deck. Rasuli's artwork is absolutely breathtaking and very dreamlike. It makes so much sense that Kelly Sullivan Walden partnered with Rasuli to do a deck about dream work, but specifically this deck is themed after the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is an incredible allegory for life and for the things that come up in our lives when we face like transformation, when we face personal growth. And the messages and the sub-messages or subtitles in this deck are so powerful. I reach for this deck a lot in my self-worth readings. I reach for it a lot whenever I get a question from a client that has anything to do with personal growth. Oftentimes I want to have this deck close at hand. Not every single time. It's all dependent on the reading, but I love working with this deck. Like the quest, plunge boldly into life. I never need to reach for the guidebook, although I can, and I have, and the guidebook is really beautifully written. I've never once used this deck for dream work. So if you've been put off by the title Dream Oracle, don't be. While yes, the guidebook does get into what the dream symbol is and how it might look if you have this symbol in your dream, I've never, ever, ever used it that way. Instead, I just find it to be really powerfully done as far as the messages. Like, trip the light fantastic, dance with the universe. Like, as an intuitive reader, this is so yummy. Be reborn daily, let go of the past and breathe in your new incarnation. How much good can you handle? Explore the upward spiral of grace. There is just, It's so good. It has never failed me. I have never pulled cards from this deck and been like, man, I wish I'd have grabbed a different deck. And I've certainly had that happen, but never ever with this one. This one is a solid deck. This is a Blue Angel. Yes, it is. And if Blue Angel republishes this in a matte cardstock, I'm going to be all over it, although I am pretty attached to this particular copy. So who knows? Maybe I'll pick it up in matte. Maybe I won't. No, I probably will. Who am I kidding? But I do hate the reflectiveness for client readings because sometimes the light gets in the way and it's a little annoying that way. But man, the artwork is so beautiful. And the art pieces that were chosen to accompany each of these keywords and themes is just, it couldn't be better, in my opinion. I have zero critiques of this deck. I think it's wonderful. I would say I probably wouldn't, I guess I do have a critique. I wouldn't reach for this deck probably for a, for every single client because it is very homogeneously feminine, but it's so subtle and soft and washy and dreamy and flowy. It almost doesn't feel like people. It almost feels like spirit, you know? So I don't know, but that would be probably an area where I would hesitate to reach for it. Like if I had a client that I know was maybe less identified with that female archetype, I might not reach for this one. But then again, I might, because its messages are really quite universal. So I don't know, but I love, 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 love this deck, and it sees a ton of play in my collection, and I definitely recommend it. Price-wise, this deck runs around $25, $26 on Amazon US currently. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. It's like not $15 like some of the Hay House ones, but man, is it ever worth it. I think it's just really, really a beautifully done deck. Okay, and that brings me to my last and final recommendation. This is a deck I have recommended for literally years. It is a really, really comprehensive deck, and one that I feel like never gets talked about. I don't reach for it as much as I used to, but it is solid, and I can't see myself ever decluttering it because it is so universally usable. And that is the Dow Oracle. This is so gorgeous. This is by Mahadeva Padma, who is the artist that created the Osho Zen Tarot. I don't feel like this deck looks or feels like the Osho Zen Tarot, though, at all. Which is not to say that you won't like it if you like the Osho Zen Tarot, but I do think it's important to mention, because if you don't like or vibe with the Osho Zen Tarot, don't cross this one off your list just because of that. Because this is really a smart, comprehensive, beautiful deck. So for starters, it's worth pointing out my copy, I edged it in like a maroon. It's like the first deck I modified. But anyways, for starters, this deck is based on the I Ching, which is a whole divination system all by itself. Now, while it's called the Dow Oracle, which did confuse me because I didn't know a lot about Dow or the I Ching or anything like that, this is a deck that is 1000% based on the I Ching. So every single card is based on one of the combinations. It's called a, oh gosh, am I going to mess this up? A hexagram? Yeah, it's called a hexagram. When you have two trigrams, one on top of the other, it builds like a figure. And that figure, each one of these cards represents one of those figures. And to make it, I guess, a little more approachable or easier, the creator of the deck uses the I Ching trigrams here. In fact, let me zoom us in so we can see these cards. Uses the I Ching trigrams here in the bottom right corner, but they also have associated some basic symbols for each of these trigrams so that you can see there's a square. That's what this one is. This one's a square, and this one's this like bowl, right? So that you can maybe learn these different symbols, right? So you can work with either these like maybe easier to recognize symbols at first, or you can work with the original hexagram symbols, trigram on trigram. Now, the reason, even if you aren't interested in learning the I Ching, one of the things that I think is really great about this is because it's based on an existing divination system that's been around for a long time. I'm just zooming us back out again. Because it's based on an existing system, it's already balanced. Just like tarot is naturally balanced, this is naturally balanced. You have light cards, you have shadow cards. In addition to that, I think the artwork is really pretty, and there's a single keyword that kind of hones in on the overall theme of that card, but then there's a group of like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 different keywords, sometimes more. Here there's 6. Here there's like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 again, different kind of sub keywords. So reading with this deck is a breeze. Here we have the opposition card and the keywords beneath it: opposite viewpoints, personal differences, a communication gap, disharmony, misunderstandings, estrangement. It's so easy to read with that if you just took this out of its package and like shuffled the deck and laid it down to do a reading, you would immediately be able to read it, because the keywords and the artwork combined, just it's so easy. It's so easy and it's so balanced. And I absolutely freaking love this deck. I've used it a ton. I think it's just brilliant. And I don't think it gets a lot of playtime on. It's just older, right? Like this deck has been out. My copy of this deck, I've had this copy since the early 2000s. So this is the first edition copy that I have here, and it was this first edition was published in September 2002, and that is the edition I have. I have the very first edition. Now, I originally got it because I was such a fan of the Osho Zen Tarot, which, as some of you know, is one of my like foundational decks. But this just stands alone. I could see myself, you know, even if I never read with the Osho Zen Tarot again, I would still read with this, and vice versa. I don't see them in any way joined at the hip. Now, what's really especially neat about this deck is that you can actually do a reading for yourself, and then you can cast coins to build a trigram and change the meanings of the cards. It's really a cool system. So I always keep 3 old pennies in with my deck so that I can do that if I choose. But let's set the cards aside for just a second. And these are matte, by the way, which is funny because this is that glorious, buttery, smooth matte cardstock that we all lust after now, but was super uncommon in 2002 when this deck was published. I don't know how. Is this a Llewellyn deck? No, this is St. Martin's Press. I don't know how they had the like foresight to know that this matte cardstock is delicious, but it is, and it's just a great deck. I have no idea what later editions look like, although I don't think they've made any changes that I'm aware of. But anyways, let's talk about the book for a second, because holy moly, this is the book you get with this deck. Again, this is really about a system all its own, so you can totally deep dive into this oracle if that's something you want to do. And I want to point your attention first to the back, because this is where you have a graph that explains how to figure out which card your I Ching hexagram is. So let's say you cast the coins to build a trigram, which I won't get into all of that right in this video, but if you cast your coins and you've got this square trigram, right? And it has to do with how many coins were heads versus tails and all that kind of thing. So let's say you got a square, and then you cast another trigram and you got this 2 lines and then a dashed line, right? You literally go here, and that's card 46. So this handy graph means that if you wanted to actually cast the coins and then draw a card to correspond with what you'd cast, you can do that with the back here. And then there's a whole other system in here called Accessing the Changes. Do I have it bookmarked? I don't think I do. Here it is. Oh, I have it dog-eared because that's how much. Okay, yeah. Accessing the Changes. So it tells you how to basically cast the I Ching. You basically do your card, and then you cast the I Ching to find out if anything changes about the hexagram. And if it does, you then access that guidebook under changes. Isn't that cool? So like, for example, let's say you drew card 33, Retreat. There's a beautiful long message here, which is, the guidebook is really, really awesome and well done. We also have in the guidebook the symbols and the hexagram for what card we're on. So it's really easy to flip through and find what you're looking for, even just by like, zoop. It's really cool. Anyway, and then if you cast the I Ching and any of your line changes, it tells you what that means. So if line 2 changes, it tells you. If the bottom line changes, it tells you. There's more to it than that, and I haven't used the changes in a while, and I might get some of that wrong, but the point is there is a interactive element where you can draw a card or cards, and then you can cast, and then based on that, you go and you look up how that changes it. It's such a cool, comprehensive, meaty oracle deck. And again, one that I just don't think gets nearly enough playtime. So it is well worth your hard-earned money, I think. This usually retails for around $30 US, I think, maybe a little less, maybe let's say 25 or so. I've only ever looked at it lately on Amazon, so I don't know if it might sell for more or less in a local bookshop or anything like that. It's just a very cohesive, complete deck and system all its own. And, you know, even just if you want to use it as a clarifier deck or pull it beside a tarot deck, I just think it's really, really effective. And I really love the artwork. Like, look at this excess card. I mean, that feels very 10 of Wands, doesn't it? 28, excess, stress, overload, exhaustion, obsessiveness, gluttony, burdens, worries, the breaking point. Like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And there's not a single theme, I think, that exists in tarot that I have not seen also in this deck. So it is, again, it's very tarot-like. You could do it all, you could use it all on its own for readings. It's just, it's a good one. I'm gushing. I know I'm gushing a lot, but I love this deck. So these, my friends, are all of this the Oracle decks that I'd like to recommend for this episode of Mass Market Madness. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Do you have any of these decks? If you do have any of these decks, do you use them a lot? Do you find that you sometimes neglect your poor mass market decks in favor of the fancy indie decks? Do you find that it's sometimes hard to figure out where the gems are with all of the decks that seem to be flooding the market? That's the kind of thing I want this video to help with, because I think, again, as I've mentioned before, I think we sometimes get it in our heads that indie decks are automatically better, and if we spend more, it must be better, and that's just not the case. These are all amazing decks, and they cost, they cost so much less than the really expensive Kickstarters and the indie stuff, and I love my indie decks, and I love my mass market decks, and I just wanted to show a little love to the mass market world. So I hope you love this. I hope you found this helpful. As always, let me know down below what you think. Let me know what you think about these decks specifically, or if you have any other recommendations to share with other people who stumble into the comments section, that's also super appreciated. As always, please do remember to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and click the little notification bell so you are notified of my future videos and my occasional live streams. Thank you all so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys!